You're like, this is the trip that I want to do.
Yeah.
You can do anything. This is it. Yeah.
So, and then I met up with you, and that was just terrific. Really, couldn't have been better.
Well,
really, it was meant to. I think Pinder Boor had something to do with it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just lucky. It was one of those things. So we'd been going to the Old Boys Association, and I was baffled. The Old Boys Association isn't as popular as I thought it should be, because, you know, I really enjoyed time at Aquinas and have a lot of good friends. And then they put on, you've got this beautiful boarding house, boarders dining room that overlooks the river. They put on a show. It's like, you pay $50 or something like that. And it's like, there's a boy that owns a distillery. So there's a boy that owns a cidery. There's beer, you know, it's all free drinks, and then a 4-course meal talking to these people. But it's people from all ages. You know, there's guys from the class of 1953. There's the guy, you know, the guy that just graduated in 2000 and whatever. And so we were sitting there, and you were the guest speaker. So I was like, I grabbed my friend Brett. I was like, let's go see this, watch Brother Cleary talk about that. And you were just sort of, you know, Brother Clearing things. You told us a really good story, the Victor Trumper thing, and drew the picture. And then you said, you know, what's coming up next? I think the interviewer said.
Yeah.
And you were like, well, you know, I'd like to do this trip over there. And this is at the end of the night. So I was like, that sounds amazing. You know, this is Brother Cleary. I've been wondering what's been going on in your life for a long time, you know. And I got hold of Matthew Noonan Crowe, who's the president. He was in my class at school.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said, listen, mate, if you can get me the budget to get over there, and we only had like 2 weeks to pull it together or something like that. You're off in 2 weeks, I think. Then I'll be there. And then I grabbed you and I said, listen, this is what I'm going to try and do. And so you were going off to Oxford to start. So have a look around in Oxford, and you're going to be there, and then Greece. And
I did a 3-month retreat there.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, so I've got about 2 weeks to pull that together.
Yeah.
And then I said to you, I'll either be at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, in Tel Aviv, or I won't be. And if I'm not there, then you're just going to go ahead and go against your trip, you know, go about your trip as you were going to anyway.
By the way, I didn't know how the hell I was going to get down to Beersheba, but I knew I was going to get there somehow.
Well, yeah. So it was like,
go on, yeah.
It was like an option play. It was like, I'm either going to be there, and then we go on this trip. We'll sort it out. We'll do a film and everything. Or if I'm not there, then it didn't happen, which is the 90% of film things don't go ahead. So, you know, and then you're just going to do what you're going to do anyway. And lo and behold, the Old Boys, they settled up. They said, all right, we'll give you a little bit of budget. We'll get your flights, and we'll give you the money to do that. And that was it. And so the next thing I talk to you.
I get landed down to me, but there you are with a taxi, and I said, oh, God, how good is this?
Well, I'm like, because your flight came, so I was looking at the flight thing, and then the flight's coming, and people are coming out, you didn't come out. And I was like, oh, shit, it wasn't on a flight. So I was kind of like starting to panic. And then I like get a lady. I'm going, go look for this guy. You're looking for this, you know, an Australian guy. He's good spirited. He's quite tall. And then anyway, eventually you sort of came through, and you're like, blow me down. And that was it. The adventure starts.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah.
And so what was the initial goal that you had when you got over to Israel? Had you ever been to Israel before?
Yeah, I had been, yeah. Well, the goal was the graveyard. And I wanted to see Pinder Boor's. I wanted to sit there and just look at it, and I guess pray. And just a little bit of a prayer or something like that. But there's nothing like being on the actual spot where things are.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. Thanks to you, we got down there.
Well, when they gave me the cash, I thought, you know, I can live pretty true. You'd already sorted accommodation at Notre Dame, this wonderful place in just outside the
school got that for me.
Yeah, the Damascus Gate in the old city, and that's phenomenal hotel, wasn't it? And it's like Vatican officials walking around and all that kind of thing. And
by the way, the boss was an old boy, the Christian Brothers I found out from Chicago.
Oh, really? Was he? Yeah, no kidding. It was a pretty powerful network, actually, isn't it?
He started to tell me all about Edmund-rice and this, that, and that before I even opened my mouth.
And so that was the perfect spot, because that was really perched outside Damascus Gate, and we could just walk down the hill straight into the Arabic quarter of the old Jerusalem, old city. So what really struck you about the old city when you first walked in there?
All the terrific history associated with it. I mean, David started to build that up 1000 BC. Remember when we spoke to those girls who were sitting by the wall that evening? I asked them, do you know how old these walls were? And they said, oh, maybe 100 years.
Like local Israel. Yeah,
They were
yeah.
locals. I said,
Yeah.
Yeah.
100
Yeah,
years.
I told them.
You're like, I'm 100 years old.
About 3,000 years off.
Yeah.
But I think one of the big things was the going down to where the supposed original sepulchre of Jesus was.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling you, and I still think of this every time I read in my New Testament, to be on that supposed spot where Mary Magdalene saw Jesus when he rose from the dead, that statue there, etc., and to sit there and actually read that from my little Bible, sitting on that spot.
Yeah.
That's still something for me I'll never forget.
Yeah.
I always giggled to myself when I came back after that, and I was sitting at a table, and there was a loud-mouthed, God bless him, American from Alabama, big fat fella. And he was a Catholic, and I said I'd been down at the tomb of Jesus. He said, well, he said, I tell you that when I go home, he said, I'm going to tell my mates or my buddies that when I looked into that tomb, he wasn't there. And that's good enough for me. It was empty. He rang from the dead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, mate. Good on you.
And that was quite busy. You know, there was a lot of pilgrims and tourists, and Jerusalem is, it is the intersection of a lot of different religions, and a lot of people from all around the world make the trip there. But we went to the room of the Last Supper. Do you remember that? What do they call that? What's the name for that?
Yeah, the upper room.
Upper room, yeah. And somehow we jagged it so that a tour group had just left. Oh, we waited them out. They left. And then you had that spot completely to yourself to do your readings. Yeah. And what was the significance of doing a little bit of the readings? What was the idea behind that?
Well, the readings that I chose, first of all, it is an upper room. It's not on the ground floor, just as it says in the New Testament. I think it's Luke or or Mark. Just to sit there and read it, what Jesus did. This is my body. This is my blood. This is where it took place. And just to sit there and just, I think these sacred places have something about them that is invisible. It can be felt when you are silent within yourself. But I think it's got something there, an ambience that doesn't go away. And that's where I found that was just quite profound. I can still see all those sort of pillars around, etc. Yeah, it was special.
Yeah. Yeah, we got some wonderful shots of you. I'd got a wide shot with everything in, and then a couple of close-ups, and you can see the stained glass windows and the kind of the light filtering through. It was just a really cinematic and special place, wasn't it?
Surreal. I don't know what the word surreal means, but must be something like that.
Super real, I suppose, would be something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that was a real, and that was kind of the feeling of the whole trip, especially when you're in the old city, is you're just walking around going, this is where it all started. When actually the day after you left, so you were there, I was there an extra day or two, an extra whole day, and then the next morning I was off. And so I'd planned that full day to run around and do all the wide shots and stuff because, so I wanted to, we're doing this, going to see all the sites and doing that kind of thing. And then on the last day, I was like, all right, I've got to get in the car. I got to zip around. I got to go to the wall, get some shots of that, go to this Dead Sea, get some shots, all the different kind of shots that we could do in that one day. So I got up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I went down to the dining room in Notre Dame and I started drinking coffee. I'm like, hot black shots, double strength, the Arabic stuff, give me that, And I'm like, bang, 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 because I've got to go hard. I know I've got one day to get all these shots. I got to go hard, all these locations. And I was going to start in Bethlehem. And do you remember that there was a Legion of Christ priest from Chicago, from Detroit? Do you remember that guy with the glasses?
Yep.
I forgot his name. But we'd been talking to him for a few times, at breakfast, you just sort of socialize with these cardinals and these guys and whatever. And he came up to me and he's like, "Oh, where's Brother Cleary?" And I said, "Oh, he had to go home, sadly, last night." And we dropped him off and he's on his way and he's like, "Oh, when are you off?" I'm like, "Tomorrow. So today I'm just running around." He's like, "What are you doing today?" I was like, "Oh, I got to run around and get all these wide shots, just all this as much as I could." And he's like, "Oh, whereabouts are you going to go?" And I said, "Well, the first place I'm going to go," I'd sort of plotted out on my map. And I was like, "I'm going to go to Bethlehem, do this, and I'm going to go to the wall and do." And he's like, "Oh, I'm actually giving a mass in Bethlehem." And so I was like, I was in my head, I was like, that's an hour. That's an hour. It's probably like 20 minutes to filter in. It's an hour of mass. And then I was like, I just couldn't do it in the day. So I said, "Oh, look, I've just got such a hectic day. I've got so much to do. I don't think I could make the mass." And then I'm sitting and I'm eating my porridge and I'm drinking my coffee and he's standing. And so he just takes off those glasses and he breathes in them, goes, cleans his glasses. He slowly puts it back on. The whole thing took about 10 seconds. It felt like 2 minutes. And he puts it on and he looks at me and he goes, "The mass is in the manger." And I was like, the manger, like the Jesus manger? He's like, "Yeah, the Jesus manger." So I was like, "Okay, all right, I'll see you there. 9 o'clock. So anyway, I had to go to Bathsheba. To Bethlehem, and I get there at 9 o'clock. And I walk in, I forgot the name of the church of the Holy something or other, whatever. And I walk in and it's big and it's ornate and there's kind of a mass going on and there's like gold everything and it's all very like big. And I'm like, oh, they really, spruce this up. And I'm sitting there looking around for this brother trying to figure out what's going on, what the manger looks like. I had no clue. I didn't really know any of this sort of stuff. And this little old lady taps me on. She's a Vatican lady from, Italian, something, taps me on the shoulder and she's like, "Are you Simon?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, we're this way." I'm like, "This isn't the church. This isn't, and she's like, "Oh, no, this is the tourist. This is the Greek Orthodox one, Ours is the real one's over here." So we go down this little passageway through a hole that's about half the size of a human because they were tiny back in the day, down a spiral staircase and into a little tiny box because you forget that the manger was in a cave. So, how it would have worked is that they walk in the cave, then there's the people in the first chamber, and then you go through the passageway and there's the animals in the second chamber. So the animals couldn't escape during the night. And so anyway, so Jesus and Mary, they must have walked in the cave, got to where the people were. They said, "No room for the night. You can go back with the animals." And then they went to the back chamber and they were nesting with the animals. And so that they've built inside there's not heaps of stuff really. There's just, like a little kind of fireplace and thing. And I was in this little space of you could only fit 4 people. It was like a 3-man tent standing up. And it had a sort of a fireplace in it. And so I get in there and I'm sweating because I thought it was going to be a mass I could hide in the back or something, but it was not. It was 2 cardinals and this Legion of Christ priest who was saying the prayers and myself. And I could barely remember mass, like the process. So, so I'm trying to mumble the words. And they were kind of looking at me a little funny. But before they started, they said, you got to say a prayer on the stone. And I looked down. And
on the stone.
On the stone. And so in the fireplace, they built a fireplace around it with a grate. And then there's this flat stone there. And that was the stone the baby Jesus was laid upon.
Oh.
So he was born in that spot, on that manger. And then that was the first stone they laid upon. So you put your hand on it and you say a prayer. And I was like, I was trying to get a prayer out in my head, quiet prayer. But I was just thinking, this is it. This is where this all started. All of this, Christianity, everything just started right here on this very stone. And that was mental to think that. Plus 5 copies deep, my heart was beating like I swear they could hear my heart beat. And so I was just like, this is, that is the significance of a place like Jerusalem in humanity. That is a massive, massive thing. Yeah, crazy. So, yeah. And then I just got about my day, and I still think about that. I'm like, that is a massive moment,
I'll tell you what massive moment I had that, I don't know whether you were with me at the time, but I might have gone back to myself, but I went to actually the site where the actual crucifixion took place.
Yeah.
And there's a big cross there, and I was sitting there, and it was very, very hot. And I had a little bottle of water in my bag. Sitting next to me, there was a young couple, American, and I could hear her saying to her boyfriend, "Oh my gosh, I'm thirsty. I don't know, I'm not feeling well. I need a drink." And I just thought, here she's saying this right at the foot of the cross where Jesus said,